Day 3. Polar bears here.
We just bought this plane, whatever it was, 6 weeks ago in Mojave, and now here it is in the jungle.
The first day of shooting was actually me. I think it was supposed to be Evangeline at one point. The work papers for Evangeline hadn't come through, and mine fortunately had, so the first day shooting was Charlie on the plane being chased by the air stewardesses into the men's room and doing drugs.
The rewriting continues, as it will until Day 32.
1, 2, 3, back! That was good. That was great.
Shooting the sequence on the plane, the interior set, which was the only true interior we had in the entire pilot. The sequence required this plane to drop, you know, hundreds of feet and crash, and it was a plane that existed on the stage floor. There was no gimbal, no movement to the plane. To figure out how to make this whole sequence look realistic, we had really wonderful and cooperative background actors, the extras in the scene, who would on cue move accordingly in the old kind of Star Trek model, where, you know, you'd move the camera in one direction, people move the other direction. We did a lot of that.
The good thing was we used Steadicam almost exclusively through that part. So instead of just a shake, it was kind of this kind of organic thing like an airplane would do.
Greg Lunsgaard, who was the Steadicam operator, was acting as much as any actor. I mean, he was performing that camera. Every move that that airplane makes inside the fuselage was performed by Greg. Then we're going to come down, and we're going to sequence. And he was wonderfully collaborative. I love those like little jitters that happen, not the kind of big shakes so much. So he would let me like hold on to the film magazine and shake the magazine to get that kind of little look. Masks!
I had those handcuffs on, and I'm reaching and stretching for the oxygen masks, and for me, it's all about throwing myself into it physically, and I'm not using tools, I'm just using my imagination. So I am like reefing on these cuffs. By the end of the day, my wrists were raw from those cuffs, because of course it's not only the 5 minutes you see on screen, it's all day of, you know, different takes, different sizes, different angles.
These are the hands that wrestled with metal all day. And they have the scars to show it. My wrists are like twice the size they normally are.
So there's this guy off camera, and he's got this anchor case. It's about this big, and it's trimmed in chrome. And it was a fake one. It was foam rubber, hard foam rubber. For 15 or 20 takes, he was just like bouncing it off my head. And they had these tubes sticking out of my head, and every time they would bounce it off my head, all this blood would spurt out.
Hey, speed on beat. 3, 2, 1, go.
We knew we wanted to do the back of the plane getting ripped away. We devised this shot with Kate in the foreground where the rear of the plane gets ripped away, where we would replace a good third of the plane with a computer-generated plane. And we had stuntmen and women rigged on wires and getting yanked out and yanked back. We had these giant Ritter fans. The whole thing is an illusion. Nothing's moving, and with the use of the special effects and the visual effects and the actors and cameramen, we were able to really pull it off.
Ae mai ano I tō Oahu, e ata vaila, e vai e ola no e.
We have a special guest today, Greg Grumberg, aka Sean from Felicity, Weiss from Alias, and Cause from The Catch will be playing our pilot.
You know, me being a real manly man, tough actor that I am, they got me in a bunch of this makeup, and they're about to yank me out of the plane, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to have Jake do it. There's my twin. There's Jay.
Fine landing you had here, Captain.
What happened was, I ordered a Mai Tai, and they made it a little stronger than they usually do. And we were cruising, and I was looking out the side of it. And, you know, things happen. This tree should not be where it is.
I love that location where the cockpit was against the tree. When I first walked into the cockpit and sort of started climbing up, I actually got nauseous. I got really severely nauseous. And it was because I looked at what I knew should be level, and it was so askew that it made me sick. And not only that, it smelled horrible in there.
The mud in the jungle is very smelly. It's rotted, so it's this incredible smell of decay that followed us everywhere. It was in all the trucks, on our boots, on our clothes.
I sort of like the idea that when you guys first ran from that cockpit, you were too afraid to think.
And also putting your hood up ruins your peripheral vision, which is scary.
That's true. But the one thing I was going to say is when you show up and scare her, by mistake, if you're hooded, it's one more thing of like, no, you know what I'm saying? It's one more piece of like, ah!
Never been to Hawaii, but obviously was very interested in a few big elements of Hawaii. First of all, being the surfing that, you know, I learned to do in New Zealand about 7 years ago. So I was very keen to come to, you know, what is now kind of the mecca of world surfing. And also just the wildlife, you know. I'm a big fan of trees and of nature and lizards and bugs and stuff like that. This is a katydid. It's called a katydid because it makes a noise that goes katydid. It's a type of bush cricket.
Had nothing but intense rain for like a week for the first week of shooting, so it's been pretty intense.
It rained for 12 days, and I don't think I've ever shot anywhere where it's rained for 12 days. But fortunately, it was part of our story, so that was fine. We were making rain, it was standing in the rain, and we even got flash flooded once out of the jungle set.
When we got to Heiakea, which is the cockpit sequence where they come, they find the pilot, there was a flash flood which came down the hill. There were literally camera cases floating away.
The lights got thrown in, with the ballast, got thrown into a container. The guys just ran and they got it into a container, and the container had flooded during the storm, as the storm had continued. So when we got there in the morning, not knowing whether we'd be able to shoot, the gaffer and the electricians were pulling out the lights and looking at the sodden ballast and going, oh. And the gaffer goes, you know, if we were like in Minnesota, we could use those big heaters that they use to keep the football players warm. And then he goes, you know, like they're like dryers. And he goes, hair dryers. And actually Kevin Blank was standing near to me, and I said, Kevin, do you have a credit card on you? And he goes, yes. I said, get in a truck, get in that van over there, tell them to take you to Long's and buy as many hair dryers as you can find. So he rushed off, and he came back, and they put the dryers on the C-stands, and they dried out the ballast, and it worked. So we were shooting within 2 hours.
We all had boots on up to our knees. The water and the mud were over the boots, getting into your boots, sloshing around, but we kept shooting. And we were making rain at the same time because it would get lighter and we needed the same consistency. So even though it could be raining, we had the fire hoses and the rain towers going at the same time.
It does rain a lot in Hawaii over the winter, and I think it's wonderful for our show. The truth is that anytime we do those big sort of jungle rain sequences, which we've done a lot of them, and I've done a lot of them, they're brutal to do. They're brutal for the crew. They're really difficult for the actors. I mean, they're cold, they're muddy, they're, you know, because we're not doing just using obviously natural rain. They're fire hosing us and stuff, but they really look good. They look amazing.
It's always hard to bring lights into a remote place like a jungle, and whatever lights we could drag into the jungle we used for fill. But we used a lot of existing ambience, even though there's so little because of the weather. I think we used the fastest film and the fastest lenses, and still barely had enough light to shoot there, even in the daytime.
We did this shot of them running, the three of them, and it would have been funny because they weren't running, they were just standing in place, going like this, three of them in a row, and we were shaking the camera, and it looks like they're running. It's actually incredible.
Jack, Kate, and Charlie were fleeing from the cockpit and the thing, and he wanted to have like a close-up of their face where they were like horrified, and being chased, but it's very difficult, obviously, particularly in the jungle and the mud, where to keep them in focus, where they're running, and be able to have a really tight shot. So what he did, the camera came in really close, and we got a close-up of their face, and he had them running in place. And like screaming and running and really looking like they were like screaming and looking over their shoulder and being horrified, and the camera was bouncing all around, so it gave the illusion that they were actually running when in fact they were running in place.
Yeah, it looked almost as good as this.
This side, right here.
And shake the camera like little shakes, like that.
Okay, wait. You do this and I'll be behind you.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
And action. Loud and rain.
Hey, guys, is this normal? You know, the day turning into night, the torrential rain, kind of end of the world type weather?
Foxy and Evie and I, while we were shooting all the scenes where Charlie and Kate and Jack go and try and get the transceiver from the cockpit, became very close, because it was kind of a baptism of fire. You know, we spent about 7 days in the middle of the jungle with 3 firemen's hoses pointed directly at our faces on full blast to create this kind of torrential end of the world type weather.
That was awesome. Cut! That was so good. Fantastic. Good. You guys gonna do it again? You go tighter? Let's go tighter? Yeah. That was great.
Going tighter.
We connected very strongly, and then the weird thing that happened was that we then jumped into the day with the polar bear coming out of the trees, which was then the introduction of Maggie and Ian and Josh and Naveen.
Think that's what killed the pilot?
No. No, that's a tiny, teeny version compared to that.